The word abdicate means to give up power or control. The king abdicated his throne so he could marry the woman he actually loved. If Phil abdicates his responsibilities, the entire company will suffer. Ted's mother says that parents these days are abdicating their responsibility to teach their kids right from wrong. Abdicate, to give up power or control.
Abut. The word abut means to be on the border of something, to be adjacent. Martin's property abutted Dave's. They had been friends in the past, but now that they were actual neighbors, things had changed. Martin had moved right next door, and Dave didn't like it at all. After all, Martin's land now abutted his own, and that was just too close for comfort. Abut. To be on the border of something.
The word adapt means to adjust, or to change something to meet a new circumstance. Cars that are adapted to accommodate wheelchairs are now readily available for people with disabilities. No one thought that novel could be adapted and made into a movie, but it actually turned out well. If we don't adapt to the interests of our customers, we'll lose business quickly. Adapt, to adjust or change.
Aghast. The word aghast means to be in wonder or fear, feeling great horror, or being very upset at seeing something. People stood aghast and watched the plane tumble from the sky. They were horrified by what they saw and simply couldn't believe they were witnessing such a terrible disaster. Their mouths were open and many of them were so shocked they couldn't actually say anything at all. Frightened and aghast at the sight, some even turned and ran because they were unwilling to look any longer. Aghast. Struck with amazement or horror.
The word ample means plenty, more than enough. The holiday celebration included ample amounts of food. You have ample time to complete the test, so don't rush through the answers. The house we're selling has ample space for a family, so maybe it will sell quickly. Ample, plenty, more than enough.
Apparition. The word apparition means a ghostly figure. As the two boys passed the local cemetery, one of them suddenly saw a frightening apparition above one of the tombstones. The figure seemed to sway back and forth, moaning and sobbing. They screamed in terror and fled from the graveyard as they saw more apparitions rising from the ground and coming toward them. Apparition, a ghostly figure. Armistice. The word armistice means a temporary ceasefire between warring parties just before a peace treaty is made or a lull in the battle. After fighting for months, the two warring groups reached an armistice. According to the terms of the deal, they would stop fighting each other for several months while their leaders worked to reach a permanent peace settlement. If their talks had not been successful, the armistice might not have lasted, and they would have been back at each other's throats before long. Fortunately, the armistice was a first step toward friendship for the tribes, and before long they forgot why they had been fighting in the first place. Armistice, truce, temporary ceasefire.
The word articulate means using language clearly or spoken in a way that is easily understood. Their 2-year-old daughter is surprisingly articulate for someone so young. Early in the morning, I'm not the most articulate person in the world, so I usually don't speak to anyone until I've had some coffee. Because Kelly is such an articulate speaker, everyone loves to listen to her presentations. Articulate, using language with clarity. The word assert means to insist on something or to state strongly. When he turned 18, Chris asserted his independence by moving out of his parents' house and into an apartment of his own. With 5 older brothers, Emma learned from a young age to assert herself. Although the city tried to shut down the protests, the people asserted their right to speak their minds freely. Assert, to insist or state strongly. The word attest means to declare or show that something is true. At the trial, the chief witness attested to the defendant's guilt. I can attest to the fact that Jake has never been late for work in his life. That shirt attests to your terrible taste in clothes. Attest, to declare something is true.
Bask. The word bask means to relax in warmth or be satisfied. The beach is a great place if you love to bask in the sun, the sand between your toes, the surf lapping against the shore, the gulls chattering overhead, and the fresh breeze. What a life! Basking in the warm rays of the sun is truly a delightful experience. Bask. To enjoy warmth. Be satisfied. Devoid. The word devoid means empty or lacking. John shook the juice bottle and even turned it upside down, but it seemed devoid of any contents. He was perplexed. His brother must be to blame. John had just had some juice that morning, but then his brother had gone to the refrigerator, and now there was nothing but an empty bottle, devoid of anything John could drink. Devoid, completely without.
Doctrine. The word doctrine means a body of teachings in a branch of knowledge or belief system. After a long meeting, the kids hammered out a new doctrine that would guide their dealings with the local bullies. Doctrine also means policy positions taken by a government or other official body. Another example usage is, Bernice thought of herself as a religious person, but she did not have much patience for church doctrine. Our country's foreign policy doctrines are often seen by others as too aggressive. Doctrine, body of teachings in a branch of knowledge or belief system.
Endow. The word endow means to give or provide something. Joe appeared before his girlfriend to endow her with the gift. He truly wanted to impress her. He thought just one more very big gift should do it, and she would want to marry him. To endow her with something she would really like would convince her that he was not just an average Joe, but a man destined to do great things. Endow, to give, to provide. Epitaph. The word epitaph means an inscription on a tomb or gravestone in memory of the person buried there. It was clear from the epitaph on the tomb that the person who wrote it did not know the deceased very well. Perhaps someone from the family should have written a short verse or statement to be placed on the headstone. At least then it would be a better tribute than the epitaph that is currently carved in the stone. Many other epitaphs in this churchyard go back to the early 18th century, although some are a little hard to read now. Epitaph, short poem inscribed on a tombstone.
The word grapple means to struggle with or hold on tightly to something. The wrestlers grappled in the middle of the mat throughout the match. No matter how much I grappled with my algebra homework, I never got the right answers. Nick grappled his way up the side of the mountain. Grapple, to grab, to struggle with something. The word jaunty means buoyantly self-confident or dapper. Tracy had a jaunty personality and was always smiling and finding fun things to do. Another example is, the young man whistled a jaunty tune as he walked happily down the street. Here's another example for jaunty. The street performer danced a jaunty little two-step while he juggled. Jaunty, carefree, cheerful. Jostle. The word jostle means to come in contact with someone on purpose or deliberately. The defender jostled the receiver as both players tried to catch the ball. Both of them fell to the ground,
but the receiver managed to hold on to the ball for a completion. He was one of the best players on the team and wasn't bothered when anyone jostled him. Jostle. To come in deliberate contact with.
Judicious. The word judicious means having good judgment or being balanced and wise. Greg was always very judicious about financial matters, so he rarely took investment risks. With their long black robes, the court justices appeared to be serious and judicious. A long string of judicious choices led me to this career, and I am quite happy with where I am now. Judicious, having good and balanced judgment.
Juncture. The word juncture means a place where two things join or come together. Stanley was certain which way to go when he came to the juncture of the two roads. To the right was an unknown path to who knows where. To the left lay a familiar road toward the nearby town. He wondered if he should try the unknown as he stood at the juncture of the two roads. Juncture, a meeting point where two things come together.
Kindred. The word kindred means very much alike, having much in common, or being related in some way. The two women had kindred tastes in music, so they instantly knew they'd make good roommates. Though they weren't brothers, Andy and Eric were kindred spirits and did nearly everything together. Their partnership worked well for the company, although their different leadership styles showed they weren't exactly kindred sorts. Kindred, very much alike.
Maim. The word maim means to cause severe injury or hurt. Robert's hand was severely maimed when it became caught in the conveyor belt. He had tried to be careful in taking products off the belt and packing them into boxes. But he became careless, and his hand was caught between the two rollers at the end of the belt. Being maimed in such a way was very painful. Maim. To cause severe injury. Mean. The word mean means one's bearing or manner, attitude. Bill strolled along briskly, his mien indicating that he was very pleased with himself. He was confident and self-assured as he whistled and hummed a tune. He even threw the banana peel on the road, showing that he also didn't take the city's litter laws seriously. Mean. Bearing or manner, attitude.
Milieu. The word milieu means cultural and social surroundings, environment. The reception was filled with businessmen and businesswomen, so I didn't really feel like I was in the right milieu. High school was a real drag, but when I got to college, I felt I had finally found my proper milieu. Bob does not feel comfortable in foreign milieus. Milieu. Cultural and social surroundings, environment.
Myriad. The word myriad means variety, a great number of things. The bookstore was filled with a myriad of books on every possible subject. Dave had a myriad of ideas for short stories, but he never actually got around to writing them. There are a myriad of cars for sale here, but none of them are interesting me right now. Myriad, variety, a great number of things. Oblique. The word oblique means indirect or not straightforward. The dog took an oblique path from the front door to his house in the yard. Instead of running straight to his house, he ran across a flower bed and circled around the tree before reaching his house. His illness is a big deal, but he only made oblique mention of it during our chat last week and did not express his concerns over his health. Oblique, indirect, not straightforward.
Opus. The word opus means a musical composition or literary work. Dan was very proud of his new book on musical compositions and called it his opus. Walter turned in his paper on time, but it was hardly the opus he'd hoped it would be. The composer promises to showcase his new opus in the concert scheduled for next week. Opus, a musical or literary work.
Ornate. The word ornate means beautifully detailed, showy, or decorated. The vase had an ornate design filled with complicated flower patterns, vines, and other features that dazzled the eye. Our living room is simple and lacks the ornate look that some of our friends prefer. She told a long and ornate story about her weekend in Paris. Ornate, beautifully detailed, decorated.
The word pallid means unusually pale, weak, or lacking intensity or spirit. Mr. Simpson had been in bed for an entire week with the flu, and his face had a pallid color that reminded his family of a ghost. Doctors tell us his pallid color is the result of a lack of red cells which carry oxygen throughout the bloodstream. When someone is sick, or if they don't get much exposure to sunlight, they can look pasty and unhealthy. Some people are simply pallid by nature and look sickly even if they're not. Another example is, they made a pallid attempt to object to the majority opinion, knowing all along it won't succeed. Pallid, pale or dull. Weak.
Prodigal. The word prodigal means a person who wastes his money and means. The prodigal spent all of his money in just a few hours buying clothes, cars, jewelry, and other luxuries. He arrived in town with a large amount of cash, but he quickly wasted his money on silly purchases. The man didn't control his spending and soon demonstrated to everyone that he was a prodigal. Prodigal, one who is wasteful.
The word recourse means assistance or a method of obtaining assistance. When Frank was told that his flight had been canceled for the third day in a row, he was extremely upset and sought recourse from the customer service representatives. He had been stuck in the airport for several days now and was eager to get home, but no one from the airline had offered to help him or had done anything to make his life easier. Frank expected that he would receive adequate recourse for his troubles in the form of a refunded ticket, or perhaps at least some assistance with his hotel bills. He decided that if the airline didn't provide him with something to help, he would have no other recourse than to tell everyone he knows to avoid flying with that company. Recourse. Alternative. Option.
Resolute. The word resolute means showing or having a fixed purpose. The company president was resolute in disagreement with the board of directors' new proposal. He was determined to see that their plan was not implemented. He wholeheartedly disagreed with the direction the board wanted to take. In meeting after meeting, the president remained resolute in his opinion that the board of directors' proposal was wrong. Resolute. Having a fixed purpose. Rue. The word rue means to feel sorrow about or regret something. His business associate said he would rue his decision to buy that particular stock, but Pete thought it had been a good choice. Why wouldn't someone want to purchase shares in a company that made plastic tennis shoes? Everyone would want to buy those, he thought. This did not happen, however, and he now rued his decision to buy stock in that company. Rue. To regret or feel sorry about doing something. Simper. The word simper means to smile in a silly way. Warren tried to explain what he was saying, but Roscoe only simpered and scratched his head. "Don't simper like that, you fool," cried Warren. "Can't you understand anything that I'm saying? You have to jack up the car before you try to change the tire." Roscoe looked at Warren, but only simpered stupidly and scratched his head some more. Simper, to smile in a silly way.
The word tether means to tie something or someone to something. The hungry goat tried its best to reach the grass, but since she was tethered to a tree, she could not quite reach its food. If Brian hadn't tied the goat to the tree, she would have not only eaten her own food, but she would have also gotten into the garbage cans and scattered trash all over the street. Evidently, Brian's neighbors had told him that he'd need to get a fence or tether his goat when she was outside. Since getting a fence would be a more expensive solution, he decided to use the rope for tethering her to a tree. Tether, to attach, to fasten.
Trepidation. The word trepidation means fearful uncertainty or anxiety. Tanya felt trepidation about rounding the corner after she heard the sound of a burglar in her house. She had so much anxiety about coming face to face with the intruder that she couldn't move for fear that the burglar might attack her. Tanya's trepidation only subsided long after she heard the intruder flee from her house, and she was convinced she was safe. Trepidation, fear, anxiety.
The word vie means to strive for victory or compete. For the 5th year in a row, Chuck and Bob vied for the title of champion pizza eater. There were at least a dozen other people who were also competing for the title, but everyone knew that the real match was between these two rivals. Each man had won 2 contests, so this year's victor would have a lead over the other. People were really enjoying watching the 2 men vie for the champion title. Vie, challenge, or contend.
Or provisions. Waif. The word waif means a lonely, needy young person. Andy just sat there all alone, a lonely waif without friends or family. He thought of all that he was missing, love, a nice home, and more, as he shivered in the cold air. Yes, Andy was a poor waif. Waif.
Waver. The word waver means to vacillate or show indecision, to go back and forth. Ted was really undecided and wavered back and forth in trying to choose which girl he should date. There was lovely Marie, but then there was the equally lovely Anne. One had blonde hair, but the other had blonde hair too. What should he do? Decisions, decisions! How long would he continue to waver before making a decision? Waver. Show indecision. Go back and forth.
The word wry means twisted or distorted. It can also mean dry and ironic. When Sally found out that her mother was planning to cook spinach for dinner, she made a wry face that showed her displeasure with the selection. When she made that distorted expression, her mother didn't take it too seriously. After all, Sally always had a crooked look whenever her mom told her what was for dinner. Another usage is, any man with a wry sense of humor should get along well with me. Wry, twisted or distorted, sarcastic.